As the world holds its breath, a quiet but critical diplomatic shuffle is underway. Israel and Hamas are set to re-enter indirect negotiations, a move many see as the last viable window to halt one of the most devastating conflicts of our time. These talks, brokered through mediators like Egypt and Qatar, could determine the fate of thousands still trapped in Gaza's ruins and an Israeli society shaken to its core. In this global affairs roundup, we unpack the significance of the latest negotiation push, the geopolitical tightrope surrounding it, and the potential ripple effects on international diplomacy, regional security, and humanitarian efforts. Diplomatic context, fragile talks. Deep distrust after months of bloodshed following the October 7th attacks by Hamas and Israel's intense military retaliation in Gaza. The two bitter rivals are now poised to re-engage, but not face-to-face. Instead, indirect negotiations will take place through mediators in Doha and Cairo, reflecting the deep mistrust and political complications involved. Hamas demands a permanent ceasefire and full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, while Israel insists on the return of all hostages and the dismantling of Hamas's operational capacity before any concessions. The Biden administration has pushed heavily for a deal and even proposed a phased three-part roadmap involving ceasefire, hostage releases, and a reconstruction plan, yet Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's far-right coalition partners threaten to collapse the government if too much ground is ceded. The complexity is further compounded by diverging international pressures. While the US and much of Europe back a ceasefire tied to humanitarian and political benchmarks, several Arab states are demanding more aggressive UN resolutions and guarantees of Palestinian sovereignty. Iran, meanwhile, remains a shadow player, amplifying tensions through its proxies in Lebanon and Yemen. These diplomatic layers make the negotiations not just a bilateral issue, but a high-stakes chess match involving global powers, ideological movements, and long-simmering regional grievances, economic and humanitarian impact. A region on the brink beyond the negotiating tables, the human and economic toll continues to climb. Gaza's infrastructure lies in ruin, with entire neighborhoods flattened, basic services collapsed, and over 1.5 million people displaced. Hospitals are overwhelmed, aid convoys are routinely blocked or delayed, and international agencies warn of famine-like conditions. The UN has called the crisis unprecedented in scale and suffering. For Israel, the war has imposed immense costs. Military expenditure is skyrocketing, global public opinion is fracturing, and economic sectors like tourism and tech are under pressure from investor uncertainty and security concerns. The broader Middle East is feeling aftershocks too. Egypt's economy is strained by the refugee influx and regional instability. Jordan is navigating public outrage and diplomatic tightrope walking. Gulf states, particularly Qatar and the UAE, are pushing for both reconstruction aid and political recognition as peace brokers, betting that their influence can buy them global clout. Meanwhile, energy markets are jittery, especially with shipping disruptions in the Red Sea triggered by Houthi attacks, creating ripple effects in global trade. For the global community, this is more than just another conflict zone. It is a moral, political, and humanitarian litmus test. The outcome of these negotiations could either stabilize the region or trigger a prolonged insurgency, wider war, and further erosion of international norms governing warfare, occupation, and humanitarian protection. The world watches, but action must follow. This moment is one of rare possibility and extreme peril. A ceasefire, if achieved, could offer a desperately needed lifeline to civilians and a path, however narrow, toward long-term political negotiation. But without sustained pressure, compromise, and vision, the talks may collapse into yet another cycle of violence. For the world's diplomatic actors, this is a chance to prove that global governance still matters and that even amid entrenched hatred, political will can open the door to peace. Stay informed. Stay engaged. What do you think? Can real peace emerge from indirect talks? Or is this just another pause in an endless storm? Drop your thoughts in the comments, share this with someone tracking global affairs, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more in-depth global briefings.
Indirect talks are to take place between Israel and Hamas today as negotiations intensify to try and reach a possible ceasefire and hostage release deal in Gaza. Even though discussions in Qatar are set to go ahead, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has cast doubt over whether a deal can be achieved after he described the proposed changes from Hamas to President Trump's 60-day truce as unacceptable. Mr. Netanyahu is due to meet Donald Trump at the White House on Monday. Well, Ione Wells is in Jerusalem for us and told us what hope there is of a breakthrough for a ceasefire on the ceasefire negotiations.
Well, at the moment, it still seems like there are significant gaps for mediators to bridge. The biggest chasm, really, that's still existing is that Hamas want a US guarantee that after any 60-day ceasefire, the fighting in Gaza will end. This is something which Israel has so far rejected in previous negotiations, but Hamas wants essentially a commitment that the war will end after the period of a ceasefire if a more permanent deal isn't agreed by the end of that 60 days. Hamas also is requesting a change to the aid provision in Gaza. It wants an end to the US and Israeli-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and a resumption of aid provided through the UN and other providers. Again, this is likely to prove pretty controversial with the Israelis because the Israelis have repeatedly accused Hamas of stealing aid provided by international relief organizations. And certainly, I think from their perspective, if they were to concede on this front, it would seem like a concession being given, which could be politically difficult for Benjamin Netanyahu as well. And finally, Hamas are also seeking Israel to withdraw its troops to positions they held before the last ceasefire collapse in March. Again, something which perhaps politically might be difficult for the Israeli side to concede to, given some of the pressures, particularly on Benjamin Netanyahu, from the far-right members of his cabinet who do not want him to end the war in Gaza, but also, if anything, want an escalation and an intensifying of the military efforts of Israel in Gaza at the moment. So these talks are set to continue, but it does look like the same sticking points remain. And Benjamin Netanyahu's office has been clear that from Israel's perspective, the demands Hamas are making are unacceptable, although both sides are saying that they are willing to negotiate.
Still some really difficult issues to overcome then, but Donald Trump has been very much talking up the possibility of there being a deal. I mean, is he being overly optimistic? Is this just him being, talking that up to quite a great degree?
Yeah, certainly Donald Trump wants to see progress. And I think the fact that both sides have agreed to enter into negotiations through mediators is something which Donald Trump can talk about on Monday as progress. Whether or not it leads to substantial progress, though, is a question we still don't really know the answer to, because it seems like these sticking points are still existing, particularly this one about Hamas wanting a guarantee that the war will end. Israel so far refusing to give that commitment. Hamas is seeking specifically a US guarantee of that, which seems to be a message to Donald Trump ahead of his meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, that if the US gives such a guarantee, then Hamas would be prepared potentially to agree to this ceasefire. So I think Hamas's demand there seems to be a direct call essentially to Donald Trump ahead of this meeting. But it does seem, as I say, that there isn't necessarily a sign Israel will accept that right now.
And meanwhile, of course, the loss of life continues, doesn't it? And the controversy over getting aid to people. What's the latest been in Gaza?
That's right. As ever with these ceasefire negotiations, people die while they're going on, and that is a concern to people on the ground, who particularly in Israel here, where it seems the majority of the population, according to polls, do want this war to end. In Gaza, the Hamas-run civil defense say at least 35 Palestinians were killed on Saturday as a result of Israeli airstrikes and gunfire. 7 were killed in an attack that hit Al-Mawasi, which is an area that is supposed to be safe, according to Israel. It's an area that people are told to evacuate to, but has been subjected to strikes over the last couple of days. 7 people there were killed, including a doctor and his children. Meanwhile, 2 American employees of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, who are providing aid now in Gaza, have also been reportedly wounded in what the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation have described as a grenade attack. Now, they and the Israelis have blamed Hamas for that attack, although Hamas haven't commented specifically in response to that. But clearly, as you say, there are ongoing injuries, deaths on both sides of this war as these negotiations continue.
Ione Wells there.